What happens when decades of military tradition collide with raw, undiscovered talent? In the most elite sniper training facility in the United States, where every shot carries the weight of life and death, where reputation is forged in steel and precision, one moment would shatter everything everyone thought they knew about excellence. This is the story of Captain Elias Ghost Thorne, a living legend whose word was law, and Maya Vance, a cadet with secrets buried deeper than any foxhole. It's about the day when impossible became inevitable, when silence spoke louder than any command, and when a single bullet changed not just a target, but the entire foundation of what it means to be elite. If you're drawn to stories where quiet heroes shake the foundations of power, subscribe now. What you're about to hear changes everything. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Blackwater Elite Sniper Training Facility, its rays catching the razor wire that crowned the perimeter fence like a metallic crown. Located in the harsh desert landscape of Arizona, this wasn't just another military training ground. It was the crucible where legends were forged and dreams were shattered with surgical precision. Captain Elias Ghost Thorne stood on the observation deck, his weathered hands gripping a steaming cup of black coffee. At 42, his salt and pepper beard framed a face carved by desert winds and marked by the weight of command. His pale blue eyes, sharp as a hawk's, surveyed the morning's first group of cadets with the calculating gaze of a predator. Those same eyes had looked through rifle scopes across 3 theaters of war, had made shots that saved American lives and ended enemy threats at distances that most soldiers could barely comprehend. 15 years running this program, he murmured to Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, his second-in-command, and they keep sending me the same types. Rich kids playing soldier, farm boys thinking hunting deer makes them snipers, and the occasional hotshot who watched too many movies. Rodriguez, a compact man with tattoos covering his muscular forearms, nodded grimly. "At least this batch looks promising on paper, sir. We've got former Army Rangers, a couple of Marine recon, even a Coast Guard rescue swimmer who apparently has an eye for distance shooting." Thorne's expression didn't change. Paper meant nothing in his world. In 15 minutes, when these cadets faced their first real test, paper qualifications would crumble like sandcastles against the reality of precision shooting under pressure. The facility's main training ground stretched out below them like a moonscape. Targets were positioned at various distances, 300 yards for the beginners, 600 for the intermediate, and a legendary 1,200-yard station that had broken more careers than it had made. Beyond that, almost invisible in the desert haze, set the 1,800-yard position. The Ghost Shot, the realm of the SEALs and Delta Force operators who came here not to learn, but to maintain their edge. "Cadets, form up." Thorne's voice carried across the grounds with the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed without question. 23 figures in desert camouflage moved with varying degrees of precision toward the assembly point. Some bore themselves with the confident stride of seasoned warriors, others with the eager anxiety of those desperate to prove themselves worthy. Thorne descended from the observation deck, each step deliberate and measured. As he approached the formation, his eyes cataloged each face, reading their histories and their postures, their fears and their fidgeting hands, their arrogance and their steady gazes. "Welcome to hell," he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "I am Captain Thorne, and for the next 8 weeks, your life belongs to me. Look around you. 23 started today. If history holds, maybe 8 of you will graduate. Maybe fewer." His gaze swept across the formation, pausing briefly on a slight figure near the back. Cadet Vance stood with perfect posture, her rifle held at precisely the correct angle, her green eyes focused straight ahead. Something about her stillness caught his attention. Not the nervous energy of trying too hard, but the calm of someone who had learned to be invisible. "The first lesson you need to understand," Thorne continued, beginning to pace in front of the formation, "is that precision shooting isn't about the gun. It's not about the scope, the ammunition, or even the distance. It's about your mind. It's about your ability to control every variable in your body while chaos reigns around you. It's about making the impossible shot when lives hang in the balance. He stopped in front of a broad-shouldered cadet whose chest was decorated with enough ribbons to stock a parade. "What's your longest confirmed kill, Ranger?" "Sir, 847 yards, Afghanistan, sir." "Impressive," Thorne replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "And you, Marine?" A weathered Staff Sergeant straightened. "Sir, 1,156 yards, Fallujah, sir." Thorne nodded approvingly. "Real combat. Real consequences." His eyes found Maya Vance again. Something in her absolute stillness intrigued him, like a puzzle he couldn't immediately solve. "Cadet Vance, what about you?" The formation seemed to hold its breath. Maya's voice, when it came, was steady and clear, with a slight southern accent that spoke of back roads and hunting seasons. "Sir, no confirmed combat kills, sir." A ripple of barely suppressed smirks passed through the formation. Here, in this temple of military precision, admitting to no combat experience was like confessing to being unable to read. "Training range?" Thorne pressed, stepping closer. Up close, he could see the calluses on her hands. Not the soft marks of weekend warriors, but the deep grooves carved by years of serious practice. "Sir, 1,847 yards, control conditions, sir." The smirks died instantly. Even the seasoned veterans turned to look at her with new interest. Thorne felt his eyebrows rise slightly before he caught himself. 1,847 yards wasn't just impressive. It was approaching the realm of legendary shots, the kind made by operators whose names appeared in classified after-action reports. "Control conditions," he repeated slowly. "Meaning what exactly?" "Sir, private range, South Carolina. Known distance, favorable weather conditions, bench rest shooting, sir." Thorne nodded, filing away the information. Bench rest shooting, the most precise form of long-range marksmanship, where every variable was controlled and measured. It was the difference between laboratory conditions and battlefield reality, but still required exceptional skill. "Today, we start with fundamentals," he announced to the formation. 300 yards, prone position, 3 shots. You will demonstrate your current level of competency, so I can determine how much work needs to be done to bring you up to standard. Those who cannot maintain a 6-inch group will be recycled to remedial training. As the cadets dispersed to their assigned positions, Thorne found himself watching Maya Vance more carefully. Her movements were economical, practiced, almost ritualistic as she prepared her position. Her rifle, a standard M24 sniper weapon system, was inspected with the methodical care of someone who understood that their life might depend on its function. Interesting background on that one. Sir Rodriguez appeared at his elbow, consulting a tablet. Maya Elizabeth Vance, age 24, originally from Beaufort, South Carolina. Father was a civilian contractor, did 2 tours in Afghanistan as a sniper instructor. Killed by an IED when she was 16. Thorne felt something shift in his assessment. A contractor father explained the unusual skill level, the familiarity with precision shooting that went beyond weekend hunting trips. Military service? None, sir. Applied 3 times to various sniper programs, rejected each time. No college degree, no prior military service, no connections. She's here through the civilian contractor program. Apparently, someone owed someone a favor. The civilian contractor program was the facility's attempt to diversify its training pipeline, accepting a limited number of non-military candidates who showed exceptional promise. Most washed out within the first week, unable to adapt to military discipline and the physical demands of the program. "She won't last," Thorne said, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Civilian contractors don't understand what it takes. When the pressure mounts, when the stakes get real, they fold. But as he watched Maya settle into her firing position, something nagged at him. Her stance was textbook perfect, but more than that, it was natural, the kind of positioning that came from thousands of hours of practice, not from reading manuals or watching instructional videos. The first shots began to ring out across the range, each report followed by the crackle of radio communications as spotters called out hits and misses. The usual pattern emerged quickly, the experienced operators clustering their shots in tight groups, the newer cadets struggling with the fundamentals, a few surprises in both directions. When Maya's turn came, Thorne found himself unconsciously holding his breath. Her first shot rang out with the sharp crack of precise ammunition. Through his spotting scope, he could see the target clearly, dead center barely an inch from the bullseye. Her second shot followed 15 seconds later. Another center hit, this one actually touching the first hole. The third shot came after a longer pause, as if she were calculating some invisible variable. When the bullet struck, it completed a triangle barely larger than a quarter, all 3 holes clustered in the 10 ring with surgical precision. Jesus, Rodriguez breathed, lowering his own spotting scope. That's better than half the instructors shoot on a good day. Thorne said nothing, but his mind was racing. That level of precision wasn't luck, wasn't beginner's enthusiasm, and certainly wasn't the result of casual training. Someone had invested serious time in teaching this woman to shoot, and she had invested serious dedication in learning. As the morning session concluded and the cadets were dismissed for lunch, Thorne made a decision that would prove more significant than he could imagine. He approached Maya as she was cleaning her rifle with the meticulous care of someone who treated their weapon as a sacred trust. Cadet Vance. She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Up close, he could see that her green eyes held depths that suggested experiences beyond her 24 years. Not the 1,000-yard stare of combat trauma, but the steady confidence of someone who had faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. "Sir, that was solid shooting this morning. Where did you really learn?" For the first time, he saw something flicker in her expression. Not fear or nervousness, but a careful calculation, as if she were deciding how much truth to reveal. "My father, sir. He believed in preparation." "Preparation for what?" "For whatever came next, sir." It was a non-answer wrapped in military courtesy, but Thorne recognized the deflection for what it was. Everyone who came to his facility carried secrets, carried motivations that went deeper than the official paperwork. What mattered wasn't what she was hiding, but whether she had the skill and determination to succeed. "Report to the 600-yard range after lunch," he said finally. "Let's see how that preparation holds up when the distance increases." As he walked away, Thorne couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just begun. In his 15 years of running the program, he had developed an instinct for identifying the special ones, the cadets who possessed that indefinable combination of skill, intelligence, and determination that separated the merely competent from the truly exceptional. Maya Vance was hiding something, that much was certain. But as the afternoon sun climbed higher over the Arizona desert, Captain Ghost Thorne was beginning to suspect that what she was hiding might be the most dangerous thing of all, genuine, world-class talent waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The afternoon heat shimmered off the concrete firing positions like water, creating ethereal mirages that danced between the shooters and their targets. At the 600-yard line, the difficulty level increased exponentially, not just because of the distance, but because of what that distance represented. This was where hunting accuracy gave way to military precision, where weekend warriors discovered the difference between hobby and profession. Captain Thorne positioned himself behind the spotting scope, his weathered hands adjusting the focus as cadets took their positions. The failure rate at 600 yards was typically 50%, and he had learned to read the signs early. The slight tremor in hands that hadn't yet learned to control adrenaline, the rushed breathing patterns of those trying too hard, the micro-adjustments that spoke of uncertainty rather than confidence. Winds picking up from the southwest at about 8 miles per hour called out Sergeant Rodriguez from the meteorological station. Temperatures 94 degrees, humidity 12%. Adjust your calculations accordingly. The environmental factors weren't just numbers to be plugged into a formula. They were living, breathing variables that could turn a perfect shot into a complete miss in the space of a heartbeat. The desert wind was particularly treacherous, seeming to come from one direction at the firing line, while shifting dramatically downrange, creating invisible currents that could push a bullet inches off target. Maya settled into her firing position with the same methodical precision she had shown that morning, but Thorne noticed something different now. Her movements had slowed slightly, each action more deliberate, as if she were performing some kind of mental calculation that went beyond the standard range estimation procedures. "Cadet Henderson, you're up first," Thorne announced. The former Army Ranger took his position with confident movements, his large frame settling behind the rifle with practiced ease. Henderson had been solid at 300 yards, grouping his shots well within acceptable parameters, and his military bearing suggested the kind of discipline that usually translated to success at longer distances. The first shot rang out, followed by a brief pause as the spotter called the impact. "Miss, high and right approximately 4 inches. Henderson adjusted his scope, muttering calculations under his breath. His second shot was closer, catching the outer ring of the target, but still not the precision expected at this level. The third shot went wide, frustrated by a gust of wind that he hadn't properly anticipated. "Adequate," Thorne announced, though his tone suggested the word was barely applicable. "Work on your wind reading." Next, one by one, the cadets took their turns, and the familiar pattern emerged. Some adapted quickly to the increased distance, demonstrating the kind of natural talent that could be refined through training. Others struggled with the mathematical complexities of ballistic calculation, their shots scattering across the target face like a failed physics experiment. When Maya's turn arrived, Thorne found himself paying closer attention than usual. Her performance at 300 yards had been impressive, but 600 yards would reveal whether that accuracy was sustainable or simply the result of favorable conditions and beginner's luck. She took her position with the same unhurried precision, but this time Thorne noticed something that made him pause. Instead of immediately settling behind the scope, she spent nearly 30 seconds simply observing, watching the mirage patterns, feeling the wind on her face, studying the environmental conditions with the patience of someone who understood that haste was the enemy of accuracy. "Any day now, Cadet Vance," he said, though without his usual edge of impatience. "Sir, requesting permission to ask a question, sir." Thorne raised an eyebrow. In his experience, questions at this stage usually indicated confusion or uncertainty, neither of which were promising signs. "Proceed." "Sir, the wind patterns appear to be shifting approximately every 45 seconds based on the vegetation movement at the 400-yard marker. Should I wait for the favorable phase or shoot through the variance, sir?" The question demonstrated a level of environmental awareness that impressed even Thorne. Most cadets at this stage were still struggling with basic distance calculation, let alone the complex meteorological factors that affected long-range precision. "Your call, Cadet. Make it count." Maya settled behind her rifle, her breathing pattern changing to the slow, controlled rhythm of someone entering what competitive shooters call the zone, that state of heightened focus where external distractions faded and the world narrowed to the relationship between shooter, rifle, and target. She waited. 30 seconds passed, then 40, as she tracked some invisible pattern in the desert air. Other cadets began to shift restlessly, interpreting her hesitation as uncertainty, but Thorne recognized what he was seeing. Patience disciplined by knowledge, the kind of tactical waiting that separated professionals from amateurs. At the 43-second mark, she fired. Through the spotting scope, Thorne watched the bullet's impact with something approaching disbelief. Dead center, punching through the target with surgical precision, the hole appearing so close to the bullseye that it might have been placed there by hand rather than delivered by bullet across 600 yards of shifting desert air. "Holy shit," whispered one of the other cadets, before catching himself and glancing nervously at the instructors. "Language, Henderson," Rodriguez called out, though his own voice carried a note of amazement. Maya's second shot followed after another careful pause, this one striking less than an inch from the first hole. The third completed a triangle that could be covered by a silver dollar. All 3 impacts clustered in the highest scoring ring of the target. The silence that followed was different from the usual post-shooting quiet. This was the silence of recognition, the moment when everyone present understood they had witnessed something extraordinary. "Outstanding shooting, Cadet," Thorne said, though he felt the words were inadequate to describe what he had just observed. In 15 years of running the program, he had seen perhaps 5 instances of shooting that precise at that distance, and 4 of them had come from instructors with decades of experience. As Maya cleared her weapon and moved away from the firing line, Thorne found his mind racing with implications. That level of performance wasn't accidental, wasn't the product of natural talent alone. Someone had trained her, and trained her well. But who? And under what circumstances? "Sir," Rodriguez appeared at his elbow, his voice carefully neutral. "Might want to take a look at her ammunition." Thorne glanced over to where Maya was repacking her gear. Instead of the standard military ball ammunition issued to all cadets, she was carefully placing hand-loaded cartridges into custom foam-fitted cases, each round identical in appearance, but clearly manufactured to tolerances that exceeded military specifications. Hand loads, Thorne observed. Match grade, by the look of them. Probably more expensive per round than most of these cadets make in an hour. It was another piece of the puzzle. Someone with access to precision ammunition, the knowledge to load it properly, and the financial resources to afford what was essentially custom-manufactured ammunition for training purposes. The combination suggested backing that went beyond simple parental support or personal hobby investment. "Cadet Vance," Thorne called out. She approached with the same measured pace, her equipment properly secured, and her bearing professional despite the attention her shooting had drawn from the other cadets. "Sir, interesting ammunition choice. Custom loads." "Sir, yes, sir. 175 grain Sierra and Match King bullets, Lapua brass, 43.5 grains of Varget powder, loaded to 2.800 inches overall length for optimal accuracy in this rifle platform, sir." The technical specificity of her answer revealed yet another layer of knowledge. Not just the ability to shoot precisely, but an understanding of the ballistic science that made such precision possible. Loading ammunition to those specifications required equipment, knowledge, and experience that went far beyond casual hobbyist level. "Who taught you to load ammunition, cadet?" For the first time since arriving at the facility, Maya hesitated. It was brief, barely perceptible, but Thorne caught it. The moment when the truthful answer collided with whatever story she had decided to maintain. "My father, sir. He believed in controlling every variable." "Smart man. What was his background?" "Civilian contractor, sir. Sniper instructor for various agencies." It was the same answer she had given before, technically accurate, but revealing nothing meaningful about the depth of training that had obviously been invested in her development. Thorne filed away the evasion for later consideration. "Report to the 1,200-yard range tomorrow morning, 0600 hours, he said finally. "Let's see how those controlled variables perform when the real testing begins." As the afternoon training session concluded and the cadets dispersed toward the barracks, Thorne remained at the 600-yard position, studying the target that Maya had engaged. 3 holes clustered in a space smaller than a quarter, each one representing not just exceptional marksmanship, but the kind of comprehensive understanding that took years to develop. "She's good," Rodriguez observed, joining him at the target stand. "She's more than good," Thorne replied slowly. "She's operating at a level that shouldn't be possible with her stated background. Civilian contractors don't produce that kind of precision, not without some serious backing." "Think she's lying about something?" Thorne considered the question as the desert wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of sage and the promise of an evening thunderstorm. Everyone who came to his facility was running from something or toward something, carrying secrets that shaped their motivation and determined their likelihood of success. The question wasn't whether Maya Vance was hiding something. It was whether what she was hiding would help or hinder her progress through the program. "We'll find out," he said finally. "Tomorrow's test will tell us everything we need to know." 1,200 yards separates the professionals from the pretenders. If she's as good as she appears to be, we'll know by lunch. If she's been lucky so far. He didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what happened to cadets who couldn't maintain their performance as the standards increased. The program had no room for temporary excellence or conditional competence. At 1,200 yards, with environmental factors multiplied and margin for error reduced to nearly zero, the truth would emerge with bullet-by-bullet clarity. But as Captain Ghost Thorne walked back toward the facility's main building, He found himself hoping that Maya Vance's secrets would prove to be assets rather than liabilities. In a world where precision could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure, genuine talent was too valuable to waste on bureaucratic technicalities or background irregularities. Tomorrow would bring answers. At 1,200 yards, it always did. The pre-dawn darkness of the Arizona desert held a crisp clarity that seemed to sharpen every sound, every breath, every heartbeat. At 0545 hours, Captain Thorne stood at the 1,200-yard firing position, watching the eastern horizon for the first hints of sunrise that would signal the beginning of what he privately considered the program's true test. This distance was where illusions died and reality asserted itself with unforgiving precision. At 1,200 yards, a bullet dropped nearly 20 feet from its initial trajectory, affected by every variable the desert could conjure: wind shear, temperature gradients, barometric pressure, even the rotation of the Earth itself. It was the distance that separated competent soldiers from elite operators, the threshold that had ended more military careers than enemy action ever would. Maya Vance arrived at exactly 0600 hours, her equipment secured in a weathered case that showed the kind of careful use that suggested years of serious practice. In the growing light, Thorne could see that her gear wasn't standard military issue. The rifle case bore the markings of a custom manufacturer, the kind of equipment that cost more than most soldiers made in several months. "Ready for this, Cadet?" he asked, though he kept his voice neutral, professional. "Sir, yes, sir." But as she began unpacking her equipment, Thorne noticed something different in her movements. The methodical precision was still there, but underneath it was a tension he hadn't observed before. Not nervousness exactly, but the coiled energy of someone preparing for something significant. "Before we begin," Thorne said, consulting his clipboard, "I want to review the parameters. Target is a standard military silhouette, 1,200 yards downrange. You'll have 5 shots to establish a group. Acceptable performance is a 12-inch spread. Exceptional performance is 6 inches or better. Anything larger than 18 inches is grounds for immediate program termination." Maya nodded, but her attention was already focused downrange, studying the target through a range-finding scope with the intensity of someone making critical calculations. "Sir, request permission to observe environmental conditions before beginning, sir." "Granted. You have 10 minutes. What followed was a masterclass in environmental assessment that impressed even Thorne's experienced eye. Maya spent the first 3 minutes simply watching the mirage patterns through her scope, tracking the heat distortion that revealed invisible air currents. She then moved to different positions around the firing point, feeling the wind direction and strength from multiple angles, building a 3-dimensional picture of the atmospheric conditions between her position and the target. "Sergeant Rodriguez," she called out, "current barometric pressure and humidity readings?" Rodriguez consulted his meteorological instruments. Barometric pressure 30.15 inches, rising slowly. Humidity 18%, temperature 72 degrees, and climbing. Thorne watched with growing interest as Maya made notes on a small pad, her calculations going far beyond the standard ballistic tables that most shooters relied upon. She was factoring in variables that many instructors overlooked, building a comprehensive picture of the environmental conditions that would affect her shots. "Time," Thorne announced. Maya settled into her firing position with the deliberate movements of someone who understood that every detail mattered. Her rifle, now that he could see it clearly in the morning light, was obviously custom-built, a precision instrument that bore the hallmarks of serious investment in accuracy. "Sir, requesting clarification on one point," she said, her eyes still pressed to the scope. "Proceed." The target silhouette appears to be positioned approximately 15 degrees off perpendicular to our firing position. Should I adjust for the angular presentation or shoot for center mass as presented? It was a detail that most shooters never noticed, the kind of tactical consideration that revealed advanced training in real-world applications rather than simple range shooting. The question also demonstrated something else. She was seeing the target clearly enough at 1,200 yards to detect angular variations that would be invisible to less trained eyes. Your call, Cadet. Real-world conditions don't come with adjustments. Maya spent another 30 seconds in final preparation, her breathing settling into the controlled rhythm that Thorne recognized as the prelude to precision shooting. When she finally fired, the shot seemed to surprise even her. Not because of any uncertainty, but because of the perfect timing that came from absolute synchronization between shooter, weapon, and environmental conditions. Through his spotting scope, Thorne could barely make out the target at 1,200 yards, but the white spotting disc that marked the impact location was clearly visible. Dead center, striking the silhouette in what would have been an immediately incapacitating hit on a human target. Jesus Christ, breathed Henderson, who was observing along with several other cadets. Did she just... Language, Ranger, Rodriguez called out automatically, but his own voice carried amazement. Maya's second shot followed, after a careful pause, during which she made microscopic adjustments to her scope based on the wind patterns she was reading through the mirage. The impact appeared less than 2 inches from the first hole, clustering in the high-value scoring area with precision that bordered on the impossible. By the fourth shot, a small crowd had gathered behind the firing line. Word had somehow spread that something extraordinary was happening at the 1,200-yard position, and even off-duty instructors had appeared to witness what was unfolding. When the fifth and final shot struck the target, completing a group that could be covered by a coffee cup, the silence that followed was profound. In 15 years of running the program, Thorne had never seen shooting of this caliber from anyone below the rank of Master Sergeant, and most of those had been instructors with decades of experience. Range clear, Rodriguez announced over the radio. Send a retrieval team to check target number 7. The wait for target confirmation seemed to stretch endlessly, though it was probably less than 5 minutes before the radio crackled back to life. Shots on target verified. 5 impacts, group measurement 4.2 inches. All shots would have been immediately incapacitating on a human target. Recommend immediate instructor evaluation. The words hung in the desert air like a challenge to everything Thorne thought he knew about training, talent, and the progression of skills development. A 4.2-inch group at 1,200 yards wasn't just exceptional. It was approaching the realm of record book shooting, the kind of performance that got written up in military journals and discussed in classified briefings. Outstanding shooting, Cadet Vance, he managed, though the words felt inadequate. That's instructor-level performance. But instead of the satisfaction or pride he expected to see in her face, Maya's expression was troubled, almost reluctant, as if the demonstration of her capabilities had revealed something she would have preferred to keep hidden. Sir, request permission to speak privately with the captain, sir. Thorne felt a chill of premonition. In his experience, requests for private conversations after exceptional performance usually preceded revelations that complicated everything. Granted, Rodriguez secured the range and dismissed the other cadets to morning chow. When they were alone beside the firing position, Maya stood at attention, but her eyes held a depth of conflict that spoke of internal struggles Thorne could only guess at. Sir, I need to be completely honest about my background. I'm listening. My father wasn't just a civilian contractor, sir. He was CIA, Special Activities Division. Spent 12 years training foreign military forces in precision shooting and surveillance techniques. When he was killed, I inherited not just his equipment and knowledge, but also certain obligations. Thorne felt the pieces clicking into place with uncomfortable clarity. The CIA's Special Activities Division was legendary within military circles. The ghost operators who trained friendly forces in hostile territory, who could put a bullet through a target's eye at distances that challenged the laws of physics, who appeared and disappeared without leaving traces in official records. What kind of obligations? Sir, there are people who knew my father, who have kept track of my development since his death. People who believe I have inherited certain capabilities that might be useful to ongoing operations. The implications were staggering. If Maya Vance was connected to CIA operations, if she had been trained by Special Activities Division personnel, then her presence at the facility wasn't coincidental. It was purposeful, part of some larger strategy that went far beyond basic sniper training. Are you here under orders, Cadet? Sir, no, sir. I'm here because I choose to be here. But there are expectations about what I'll do with the training, about where I'll go after graduation. Thorne studied her face, reading the conflict between duty and personal choice that he recognized from his own career. The military was full of people caught between what they were asked to do and what they wanted to do, between the missions they were assigned and the lives they hoped to build. And what do you want to do? For the first time since he had met her, Maya's professional composure cracked slightly, revealing something vulnerable underneath the tactical competence. I want to serve, sir. I want to use these skills to protect people, to make a difference. But I want to do it openly, as part of a legitimate military unit, not as some ghost operator whose existence gets denied if something goes wrong. It was an answer that revealed character as much as capability. Someone who possessed world-class skills, but wanted to use them within the framework of honor and accountability that defined legitimate military service. The shooting you just demonstrated, that wasn't luck, was it? No, sir. I've been training since I was 12 years old. My father started me with fundamentals, but after he died, his former colleagues continued my education. They said I had a gift that shouldn't be wasted. Thorne nodded slowly, understanding now why her performance had seemed so polished, so far beyond what should have been possible given her stated background. She hadn't just learned to shoot. She had been systematically developed by some of the most skilled operators in the world, prepared for missions that required capabilities beyond normal military training. Who else knows about your real background? Sir, officially no one. Unofficially, I suspect that someone with significant influence arranged for my acceptance into this program. The civilian contractor slot opened up at exactly the right time, and the paperwork moved through channels faster than it should have. Another piece of the puzzle. Someone with serious pull had wanted Maya Vance at this facility, had engineered her placement in a way that appeared legitimate but bypassed normal screening procedures. The question was whether that someone was friend or foe, whether her presence represented an opportunity or a threat. Cadet, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Are you here to spy on this facility, to gather intelligence on our training methods or security procedures? Sir, no, sir. I'm here to become the best sniper I can be, to earn the right to serve my country openly and honorably. Thorne studied her face, looking for tells that would indicate deception. What he saw instead was sincerity, determination, and the kind of quiet integrity that couldn't be faked under pressure. All right, Cadet, here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue through the program like any other student. You'll meet every standard, complete every exercise, and prove that your skills are matched by your character and judgment. If anyone asks about your performance today, the official answer is that you're a naturally gifted shooter who's responding well to professional instruction. And unofficially, sir, unofficially, I'm going to find out exactly who's been pulling strings behind the scenes and why they wanted you here badly enough to manipulate the system. Because Cadet Vance, in my experience, when the CIA takes an interest in military training facilities, it usually means someone is planning operations that go far beyond normal military missions. As they walked back toward the facility's main building, Thorne found himself facing questions that went far beyond the scope of normal sniper training. Maya Vance's presence had transformed what should have been a routine evaluation into something much more complex. A situation where exceptional capability intersected with classified operations and hidden agendas. But as he watched her pack her equipment with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else, Thorne made a decision that would prove more significant than he could imagine. Whatever secrets surrounded Maya Vance's background, whatever hidden purposes had brought her to his facility, she deserved the chance to prove herself on her own merits. The real test, he was beginning to suspect, was still ahead. 3 weeks had passed since Maya's extraordinary performance at 1,200 yards, and the training program had settled into a rhythm of incremental challenges and steady improvement. The other cadets had gradually accepted her presence, though her shooting ability continued to generate a mixture of respect and puzzlement among those who couldn't understand how someone with no official military background could consistently outperform seasoned veterans. Captain Thorne had spent those 3 weeks conducting his own quiet investigation into Maya's background, using contact from his own special operations past to dig deeper into the story she had revealed. What he discovered was both more and less than he had expected. Confirmation that her father had indeed been CIA Special Activities Division, killed in an IED attack that had been classified as an industrial accident in the official records. But more troubling was the discovery that Maya's training hadn't ended with her father's death. Phone records, financial transactions, and travel patterns suggested that she had been systematically developed by a network of former operators who remained invisible to official oversight. Now, on a morning when the desert air carried the promise of a thunderstorm building beyond the eastern mountains, Thorne faced a decision that would define not just Maya's future, but potentially his own career. The facility had received an unusual request from higher headquarters, a demonstration shoot for a group of visiting dignitaries whose identities remained classified, but whose interest in precision shooting capabilities was clearly more than academic. Cadet Vance, he called as the morning formation dispersed toward their various training stations. Report to my office immediately. Maya's expression remained neutral as she followed him into the Spartan office that served as his command center, but Thorne could see the wariness in her eyes. She had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when routine training was about to become something more complex. Sit down, he said, closing the door behind them. We need to discuss your immediate future. She settled into the metal chair across from his desk with the same controlled precision she brought to everything else, waiting for him to continue. I've received a request from some people who are very interested in your capabilities, Thorne began carefully. They want a demonstration of extreme-range precision shooting. 1,800 yards. Maya's composure slipped for just a moment, revealing something that might have been fear or excitement. Thorne couldn't tell which. Sir, 1,800 yards is beyond the effective range of standard military ammunition with this rifle platform. I'm aware of that, which is why they're providing specialized ammunition and asking for a volunteer who can make the shot under observed conditions. Your name was specifically mentioned. The implications hung in the air between them, like smoke from a distant fire. Someone with significant influence knew exactly who Maya Vance was and what she was capable of. The demonstration wasn't a test of her abilities. It was a showcase, designed to prove to someone that an asset they had invested in was ready for operational deployment. Sir, request permission to ask who made this request. Permission denied. What I can tell you is that declining isn't really an option. This comes from high enough up the chain that refusing would result in immediate program termination and likely legal complications that you don't want to face. Maya absorbed this information with the same calm calculation she applied to wind speed and bullet drop. After a long moment, she nodded. When, sir? This afternoon. 1,400 hours. The observers will include some very senior people who are in a position to determine your future assignments after graduation. And if I miss? Thorne studied her face, seeing beneath the surface calm to the deeper question she was really asking. A miss at 1,800 yards wouldn't just be a failure of marksmanship. It would be a demonstration that the investment made in her training had been wasted, that the expectations built around her capabilities had been misplaced. Let's focus on not missing, he said finally. At 1,345 hours, a convoy of black SUVs arrived at the facility's main gate, carrying passengers whose identities were verified through channels that bypassed normal security procedures. Thorne watched from his office window as men in expensive suits and military uniforms gathered at the observation area that had been hastily constructed near the 1,800-yard firing position. Among them, he recognized General Patricia Morrison, a 3-star who had oversight of special operations training programs, and beside her, a man in civilian clothes whose face triggered memories from classified briefings. Someone from the intelligence community whose presence suggested that this demonstration had implications far beyond routine training evaluation. Sir, Rodriguez appeared in his doorway. The observers are requesting a briefing on the shooter's background and capabilities. Tell them they'll get their demonstration. Background information is need to know, and they clearly already know what they need to know. As Thorne made his way to the firing line, he found Maya already in position, her equipment laid out with the methodical precision that had become her trademark. But beside her standard gear was a rifle case he didn't recognize, a hard case with military markings that suggested equipment well beyond anything in the facility's inventory. "New hardware?" he asked. "Sir, specialized equipment provided for this demonstration. Macmillan TC 338 rifle chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum, with custom-loaded ammunition designed for extreme range performance." Thorne examined the rifle with professional interest. The .338 Lapua Magnum was legendary among long-range shooters, a cartridge designed specifically for extreme distance shooting, capable of maintaining accuracy at ranges that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. This wasn't training equipment. This was operational hardware, the kind of rifle carried by operators whose missions required shots that existed at the edge of human capability. "Have you fired this system before?" "Sir, yes, sir. Extensively." Another confirmation that her training had gone far beyond what she had officially acknowledged. The .338 Lapua system wasn't something you learned on. It was something you graduated to after years of progressive development with lesser calibers. At exactly 1,400 hours, General Morrison approached the firing line with the measured pace of someone accustomed to inspecting capabilities that could change the balance of global conflicts. "Cadet Vance," she said, her voice carrying the authority of decades in uniform. "I understand you're prepared to demonstrate precision shooting at 1,800 yards. "Sir, yes, sir. For the record, this distance exceeds the standard engagement parameters for most military sniper systems. You're comfortable attempting this shot?" Maya's response came without hesitation. "Sir, yes, sir." General Morrison nodded and stepped back, joining the group of observers who had positioned themselves where they could clearly see both the shooter and the distant target through high-powered spotting scopes. "Wind conditions are marginal," Rodriguez reported from the meteorological station. "Southwest wind at 12 to 15 miles per hour, gusting to 18. Temperature 89 degrees. Humidity 15%. Barometric pressure steady at 30.12 inches. Thorne translated the conditions in his mind. Challenging, but not impossible. The kind of environmental factors that would test every aspect of Maya's training and equipment. At 1,800 yards, the bullet would be in flight for over 2 seconds, during which time wind conditions could shift multiple times, each change affecting the projectile's path in ways that required not just calculation, but intuition developed through years of experience. Maya settled behind the rifle with movements that seemed almost ritualistic, each adjustment precise and purposeful. Through his spotting scope, Thorne could barely make out the target, a military silhouette that appeared impossibly small at the extreme distance. "Sir," Maya called out, requesting permission to observe conditions before engaging. "Granted. Take all the time you need." What followed was a demonstration of environmental assessment that impressed even the experienced observers. Maya spent nearly 10 minutes studying the mirage patterns, wind indicators, and atmospheric conditions between her position and the target, building a comprehensive picture of the challenges she would face. When she finally settled into her final firing position, the desert seemed to hold its breath. Even the constant wind appeared to quiet, as if nature itself was waiting to see what would happen when human skill met the absolute limits of possibility. The observers had gone silent, understanding that they were about to witness something that existed at the very edge of what was achievable with precision shooting technology and human capability. Maya's breathing settled into the controlled rhythm that Thorne had learned to recognize as her preparation for exceptional performance. Seconds stretched like hours as she made final calculations, adjusting for variables that existed beyond normal ballistic tables. When the shot finally came, the report of the .338 Lapua seemed to echo across the entire desert, a sound that spoke of serious intent and devastating capability. The bullet's flight time at 1,800 yards was long enough for doubt to creep in, long enough for everyone present to wonder if human skill could truly overcome the mathematical improbabilities of extreme range shooting. The radio crackled after what seemed like an eternity. Impact confirmed. Center mass hit. Target neutralized. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the desert wind and the distant rumble of thunder from the approaching storm. Through his spotting scope, Thorne could see the white spotting disc that marked the impact location, dead center on the silhouette, a shot that would have been immediately fatal on a human target. General Morrison lowered her own spotting scope and turned to the civilian observer beside her. Their conversation was too quiet to overhear, but Thorne could see the satisfaction in their expressions, the look of people whose expectations had been not just met but exceeded. "Outstanding shooting, Cadet," the general said, approaching Maya's position. That was world-class marksmanship. But instead of pride or satisfaction, Maya's expression was troubled as she secured the rifle and began packing her equipment. When the observers had departed and the range was clear, she approached Thorne with the same conflicted look he had seen after her 1,200-yard demonstration. "Sir, request permission to speak freely." "Granted. Sir, I know what that demonstration was really about. Those weren't training observers. They were potential employers evaluating an asset they've invested in developing." Thorne nodded grimly. He had reached the same conclusion, understanding now that Maya's entire presence at the facility had been orchestrated by people who saw her not as a soldier seeking to serve her country, but as a precision instrument to be deployed in operations that existed outside normal military chains of command. "What are you going to do about it?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying the distant mountains where lightning flickered in the gathering storm clouds. "Sir, I'm going to finish this program and graduate with honors. I'm going to prove that I'm more than just a trigger puller, that I have the judgment and character to serve openly in the United States military." "And if they have other plans for you?" "Then they're going to discover that being trained by the best doesn't automatically make you controllable by them. My father died serving his country, not serving the personal agendas of people who hide behind classification levels and plausible deniability." It was the answer Thorne had hoped to hear, the response of someone who understood the difference between capability and character, between being used and choosing to serve. "Cadet Vance," he said formally, "it's my professional assessment that you have demonstrated exceptional marksmanship skills and sound tactical judgment. Upon graduation, I will be recommending you for assignment to a special operations unit where your capabilities can be properly utilized in legitimate military operations." "Thank you, sir." As Maya walked away across the desert range, her equipment secured and her bearing professional despite the weight of decisions that lay ahead, Thorne reflected on the transformation he had witnessed over the past weeks. She had arrived as an enigma, someone whose capabilities didn't match her official background, whose presence raised more questions than it answered. But the shot she had just made, a feat of marksmanship that pushed the boundaries of human possibility, had revealed something more important than exceptional skill. It had demonstrated the character of someone who could choose her own path despite the expectations of those who had invested in her development. The storm that had been building all day finally broke as Thorne made his way back to the facility's main building, rain falling on the desert with the intensity of change itself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cadets, new tests of capability and character. But today had proven something that would resonate far beyond the boundaries of the training facility. That true excellence wasn't just about hitting impossible targets, but about choosing the right ones to aim at in the first place. Captain Elias Ghost, Thorne had spent 15 years training snipers, watching as some rose to meet extraordinary challenges while others fell short of their potential. In Maya Vance, he had discovered something rare, not just exceptional capability, but the wisdom to use it in service of principles larger than personal advancement or institutional convenience. The scoffing voice that had dismissed her as just another overconfident cadet seemed like a memory from another lifetime. The woman who had just made an impossible shot at 1,800 yards was no cadet. She was a warrior who had chosen her own definition of honor, regardless of what others had planned for her future. And in the end, Captain Thorne realized that choice was the most important shot of all. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Maya Vance stood on a rooftop in Kandahar, her rifle trained on a compound where intelligence suggested American hostages were being held. The shot she was being asked to make, 1,650 yards through shifting desert wind, was well within her capabilities, but the target wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that she was here as part of a legitimate special operations unit, serving openly under the flag she had sworn to defend, making decisions based on rules of engagement that were subject to oversight and accountability. The radio crackled in her earpiece. "Overwatch, this is ground team. Do you have a shot?" Maya settled behind her rifle, the same .338 Lapua system she had used for her demonstration, but now carried in service to missions that served something larger than hidden agendas. "Ground team, Overwatch. Shot available. Awaiting your call. Take the shot." The bullet flew true across the desert distance, striking its target with the precision that had been developed through years of training and tested in the crucible of impossible expectations. But this time, the shot served not the ambitions of shadows and unnamed authorities, but the simple, powerful purpose of bringing American citizens home safely. Later, as the hostages were extracted and the mission was marked as successful in official records that would never be classified beyond their operational necessity, Maya reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. Captain Thorne had been right. The most important shot was choosing the right target. And sometimes, the most difficult target to hit was your own definition of who you wanted to be, regardless of what others expected you to become. The desert wind carried the sound of helicopters returning to base, and with it, the knowledge that she had finally found her place in the fight that mattered. If you like this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug, and see you soon.